Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled Planet X Induces Super Nuclear Reactions in the Earth's Core. Now, Planet X system stellar cores are dead planets or stars, which come into the solar system as comets and end up as gas giant planets or Earth moons. These objects are low in gravitational photon energy and as a result have low gravitational influence, but retain a strong electric field. And you see some of these objects here. This one in the sun's corona. There's another one there. There's another one there, all in the sun's corona. And this one within the Earth's atmosphere. You can see it's a spherical object covered in cloud. And it is obviously within the Earth's atmosphere. Now, these objects are also able to closely approach living celestial objects like the Sun and the Earth to the point that they enter their atmospheres because they are not able to generate an outer negative layer. This is why you see them here within the Earth's atmosphere. And you may look at Article 532 entitled Planet X or Comet Re-Energizing Process. This allows them to induce a matter creation event in the core of the Earth, which results in a volcanic eruption or an earthquake if the explosion of magma moving outwards towards the surface does not find an outlet all the way to the surface in the case of the Earth, and which results in a CME event in the case of the Sun. And you may look at Article 505 entitled Planet X Creating Earthquakes by Inducing Positive Plasma Current Flows. And so you have, if you have a celestial object, and this represents a living celestial object which has a core that is still able to generate matter, to create matter, and it's positively charged. And so this core generates a positive electric field. But this electric field ends at the surface, and that is because the surface is neutral and it has a negative outer layer. So the electric field must end at this point, and then a negative electric field will be in the outer negative layer. Whereas the Planet X stellar core's field, positive field, does not end because it does not have a negative outer layer. So all it does is it has a core, but it's dead. It's not able to create matter because it's low in gravitational photon energy, and its outer layers are now just a debris field around it. So there's no end to its electric field, and so that electric field overlaps over the living celestial object's electric field. This causes this electric field to become very strong, very close to the core, and that triggers a matter creation event. You may look at Article 526 entitled Planet X and the Moon. The Moon has not always been in the sky for more details. And so the Planet X object will then, once it triggers this matter creation event, will usually be ejected whenever this host celestial object has this matter creation event, because the event distorts the internal positive electric field, because matter now explodes outwards from the core towards, well, in the direction of where this Planet X system stellar core is within the atmosphere, and it finds an outlet all the way to the surface or a volcano. It will spew out onto the surface and even attach to the object, which will therefore absorb it. But if it does not find an outlet, it just causes an earthquake. It goes out as far as it can. But at the same time, the matter that is moving out towards the surface carries a positive electric field with it. So that means that the positive electric field moves closer, or the stronger part of the electric field moves closer to this object, and this causes it to be repelled, and it's often ejected away from either the Earth or the sun. And this is why we usually see these objects being ejected, moving away from the sun at high speed within CME material. And you may again look at Article 532 for more details on that. There is no violation of conservation of energy whenever we have these matter creation events. And this is because energy is transformed from one form to another. Light is transformed into matter. Energy can exist in three different forms: light or free photons, matter or mass, and gravitational photon energy, which is light when it exists within matter or particles. And this is illustrated here, how if you have a photon moving through a very high electric field, then the particles that were already in existence within it will be pushed out, will be pulled in opposite directions so that they emerge from within the photon. So an electron and a proton emerges. The photon now goes into becoming the mass for these objects, and whatever's left becomes photon, or light, which continues to exist within the particles. In other words, gravitational photon energy. And I call it gravitational photon energy because it is associated to the strength of the gravitational interaction. So what we have here is particles that existed within the photon before this occurred but had no mass. When the photon goes through a region of very high electric field, because they are oppositely charged, they are pulled in opposite directions and emerge from within the photon. And then the photon energy goes into mass, and the rest remains as photon energy, but now it exists within the particles. And you may look at Book 3 entitled Planet X Reveal Gravity and Light for more details. Everything therefore comes from within light. So all energy, be it mass or energy within mass, is simply light in a different form. Matter with no energy or no light within it will not be able to interact via the gravitational interaction, no matter how much mass it has. In addition, the structure we see at the microscopic or quantum level with respect to particles or atoms is the same that is seen at the astronomical level with astronomical or celestial objects, so that living celestial objects are like atoms, in other words, super atoms, because they're made out of lots and lots of atoms. And Planet X system stellar cores are like ions, atoms with missing electrons, in other words, super ions. In addition, the core of each celestial object can be thought of as a proton, the nucleus of a hydrogen atom. Living celestial objects have a negative electron layer and are thus like a neutral hydrogen atom. And a Planet X core is like a hydrogen atom without an outer electron. You may look at Article 514 entitled Stellar Cores or Gravitational Poles or Superprotons for more details. And this is illustrated by this diagram, how every object in the universe, from a galactic nucleus to a star, a planet, and I have a galactic nucleus here. A quasar is a proto-galaxy or baby galaxy, and an atom, and we have the simplest atom we can think of, which is an hydrogen atom, and it has a nucleus which has only one proton in it, and it has an electron. So that's a neutral atom. If you remove the electron, all we have is a proton or a hydrogen nucleus. Now, if two hydrogen atoms approach each other, they can only get so far, as their outer electron does not allow the two to come together beyond a certain distance. This is also what happens with celestial objects. Once Planet X system's stellar cores gain the ability to produce their own outer negative layer, they will never again enter the atmosphere of another celestial object and will therefore go into orbit around their host. But if a proton approaches an hydrogen atom, it will be able to penetrate it, absorb the electron, which turns it into a neutron, and approach the proton in the nucleus. The result is a nuclear reaction, which causes the release of energy in the form of light. In other words, free electrons. This is a light creation event in which some of the light within the protons, gravitational photon energy, in other words, is released as free photon energy. And this is illustrated by this diagram. So if you have two neutral hydrogen atoms, they can never penetrate each other. Their outer electron does not allow the two to come together beyond a certain distance. This is exactly what happens between living celestial objects. They never enter each other's atmosphere, but which is basically the atmosphere is the negative outer layer, so it's the electron layer. But if you have an hydrogen atom and a free proton with no negative outer layer, the proton is able to enter the atmosphere of the hydrogen atom. It's able to enter and approach the nucleus. And then what happens is it interacts with the electron, and when a proton and an electron combine, what we get is a neutron. And what we end up then with is a proton and a neutron, which is a deuterium nucleus. And we have a release of energy in the form of a gamma ray or a photon. So this is a nuclear reaction. It results in a new nucleus, a heavier nucleus, which now has a proton and a neutron in it. The reason why gravitational photon energy is released in such a nuclear reaction is that the formation of a neutron takes the release of gravitational energy, because a proton and an electron with high gravitational energy will repel each other through the charge separation part of the gravitational interaction. It is only when they have less gravitational energy that the gravitational repulsion decreases to the point that the electric interaction can cause the two, the proton and the electron, to combine into a neutron. And the electrostatic or electric interaction and the gravitational interaction are illustrated here. This is basically a summary of the theory I came up with, which explains the observations that I was seeing of these objects in the sun's corona. So the electrostatic interaction is the same as always. It causes particles of opposite charge to attract, whilst the gravitational interaction does the opposite. It causes particles of opposite charge to repel. And this is why I started out calling it the charge separation interaction. Eventually I realized that it is the same interaction here, it's just in different cases. So it causes two protons to strongly attract, whilst the electrostatic does the opposite. It causes them to repel. And the strength of the force is always dependent on the amount of photon energy within the particles. So we need a proton and electron are separated by the fact that they have a large amount of gravitational energy within them, which causes a strong repelling force between the two. And that keeps the electron away from the nucleus. But if one of them has less energy, then the force, the repelling force, would not be as strong, and they can come together and form a neutron. And this is what is illustrated here. So what we have here is the hydrogen atom. It's a proton and electron. They both have the same amount of photon energy within them. They have a strong repelling gravitational force, therefore, which keeps them apart, keeps the electron in the outer layer. And there is an attractive force between them as well, and that's the electric force, which we see here. So there are two forces acting on them, the electrostatic and the gravitational. But then here comes a proton. It enters, it's only a proton with no outer electrons. So it's able to enter this atom. It first approaches the electron, and because it has less gravitational energy in it, the repelling force is not as strong. And that means that it can now combine with it, because now the electrostatic force, which causes the two objects to attract, is stronger than the gravitational repelling force. So they combine into a neutron. And then you end up with a proton and a neutron, and they will have to end up with the same amount of energy. Energy will transfer backwards and forwards until they have the same energy. And then the excess is expelled as a photon. And this is the sum of the nuclear reaction that leads from the formation of a nitrogen atom to a deuterium atom. Now, in a similar way, when a planet X system stellar core, which has low gravitational energy, approaches the core nucleus of a living celestial object, it triggers the release of gravitational energy, which then gets converted to mass because of the high electric field environment, as the electric field of both objects overlap. Thus, a matter creation event induced by planet X system stellar core is a super nuclear reaction. The matter creation events which occur naturally during the formation of a planet, or when a galactic nucleus goes through a matter creation event, are also supernuclear reactions. And you may look at Article 524 entitled Mercury created by the Sun due to planet X. In this case, the object's gravitational energy is too high for its size, which as a result also generates a very strong electric field. The object's gravitational energy is too high for the amount of mass available, so the core becomes unstable, which then triggers a release of gravitational energy. In a newly formed planet, for example, this will occur because the newly formed planet will initially have the same gravitational potential as the star that formed it, but the planet's mass is much less than the star's, so gravitational energy is released in the form of free photons until a state of balance for the size or mass of the planet is reached. Whenever photons emerge as a result of the matter creation events, they emerge into a very high electric field environment, which then causes matter to emerge from within the photons, i.e. matter creation events occur. The astronomer Halton Arp deduced through his observations, which he describes in his book Seeing Red, that active galactic nuclei were having matter creation events. They were ejecting matter in a fluid form, which condensed into quasars, which then unfurled arms and became galaxies in their own right. This is exactly the same process which occurs in stars and planets. All cores are able to create matter. And you may look at Article 522 entitled Stellar Cores or Sources of Matter or White Holes. Galaxies which were ejecting quasars were super bright, indicating they had an excess of gravitational energy for their mass, which then triggered matter creation events. And this is illustrated by this diagram, how an active galactic nucleus ejects matter, which condenses into a quasar, and then the quasar, in the course of time, ejects its own matter, which goes into forming its arms, and it thus becomes a galaxy. You may look at Article 126 entitled White Holes Instead of Black Holes at the Center of Galaxies. So in conclusion, Planet X system's stellar core observations has led to the understanding that matter creation events, which give rise to volcanic eruptions on the Earth and CMEs on the Sun, are like nuclear reactions which occur at the particle level And they are thus, at the celestial object level, supernuclear reactions. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.